I'd turned 37 just last week. Birthdays weren't exactly fun anymore, not just because of getting older but the reminder of my chronic illness that flared up like an uninvited guest at the worst times. This year was no exception. The day after my so-called celebration, which was just me and a takeout pizza, I found myself heading back to the clinic for a scheduled checkup and a bit of rehab to manage the pain. The clinic was the kind of place that was both comforting and depressing. White walls, the smell of disinfectant, and faces that tried too hard to look hopeful. I was a regular, enough to know most of the staff by their first names. While waiting, I scanned the room. That's when I saw Jack again. He was the too handsome to be real nurse who'd been part of my care team on and off for the past year. Dark hair, a ready smile, and eyes that actually made you believe he cared. And he was walking straight towards me. "Amelia, didn't expect to see you back so soon. Everything all right?" he asked, his voice a mix of concern and something else I couldn't quite place. "Just the usual tune-up," I replied, trying to sound casual while my stomach did weird flips. Jack chuckled. "Well, let's get you checked in, then. I'll be taking care of you today." The way he said "taking care of you" could have meant a million things, and my heart wasn't ready for any of them. We walked to the examination room, and I couldn't help but notice the way other patients looked at him, especially the younger women. I wasn't the only one affected by Jack's charm, it seemed. As he took my vitals, his touch was professional, but gentle. "Blood pressure is a bit high. Stressing about something?" "You could say that," I admitted, glancing away. "Life, you know?" "Tell me about it," Jack said, scribbling notes in my chart. "You need to take it easy, Amelia. You push yourself too hard." "Easy for you to say," I retorted, a bit sharper than I intended. "Not all of us have the luxury of taking it easy." Jack stopped writing and looked up, his gaze steady. "I get it. You're always here, always fighting. When do you get time for yourself? For something more, for someone?" I looked up, surprised by the intensity in his eyes. "What are you getting at, Jack?" He hesitated, then took the plunge. "I see you, Amelia. Not just the sick patient, not just the woman who's always battling something. I see you, and I like what I see." The room suddenly felt too small, his presence too close. I swallowed hard, trying to gather my wits. "Jack, I'm not. I mean, with my condition, I can't." "I don't care about your condition," he cut in, his tone firm. "I care about you. The real you, behind all the medical charts and doctor visits." It was too much, too fast, and part of me wanted to run. But another part, a part I'd silenced for so long, wondered what it would be like to let someone in. To not be alone in this. Since that day at the clinic, Jack and I started seeing more of each other. It wasn't just medical appointments anymore, it was dinners, movies, long drives, things I hadn't really let myself enjoy in a long while. Jack made them easy, made them fun. He had this way of making everything seem exciting, even just a walk in the park. One evening, about 6 months after that deep conversation in the clinic, we were at my place, sitting on the couch with some cheap takeout, just relaxing after a long week. I was laughing at a joke he had just made, my sides aching from the laughter, when he suddenly grew serious. "Amelia, I gotta ask you something." His tone had changed, and it made me pause mid-laugh. He took a deep breath, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a small box. My heart skipped. "Amelia, these past months with you have been the best of my life. I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but I don't want to wait to ask this. Will you marry me?" His voice was firm, but I could hear a trace of nervousness. I stared at him, then at the ring, then back at him. "Jack, I don't know what to say." "Say yes?" He grinned, that lopsided grin that had won me over from day one. I took the box from his hand, opening it to see the ring, a simple, beautiful piece. Nothing too flashy, but perfect. "Jack, I do love you. God help me, I do. But if we're doing this, we're doing it my way." "Anything," he said quickly. whatever you need. I want a prenup, I said bluntly. His face didn't change, no surprise, no anger, just an open waiting. If something happens to me, all my stuff goes to you. But if we split? Jax cut me off. Sure, I don't care about that. I don't want your stuff, Amelia. I just want you. That's when I knew my answer. All right then, yes. Yes, I'll marry you. The smile that spread across his face was like the sunrise after a long, dark night. He slipped the ring on my finger, and we kissed, a seal on our crazy, rushed, but utterly real, engagement. We didn't wait long. The wedding was planned for just a few weeks later, a quiet affair at the city hall. Just him, me, his sister, and her husband. It was strange, planning a wedding without the usual fuss. No big dress, no hundreds of guests, just the essentials. But it felt right, with Jack. We signed the papers, exchanged rings, and it was done. We were married. As we walked out of the city hall, his sister threw some confetti she'd brought, laughing and shouting congratulations. Life with Jack started off like something out of a fairy tale, or at least what I figured a fairy tale felt like. He'd quit his nursing job, said he was done taking care of sick folks day in and out. Said it wore him down. I didn't mind much, the restaurant was doing well enough, and I enjoyed having him around more. For the first few months, Jack turned into the kind of husband you read about in old-fashioned romance novels. He cooked meals that would make a chef weep, and he kept the house spotless. Dinners were these lavish affairs, and I tell you, nobody set a table like Jack. Candles, the good china, music playing soft in the background, I felt like royalty. But then, things started to shift. It was subtle at first. I'd come home, and he'd be holed up in his office, the room he'd claimed for himself right after the wedding. Said he needed a space to manage house stuff, bills, and whatnot. Babe, dinner in 20, he'd call out, not even poking his head out to say hi properly. One evening, I came home a bit frazzled from the restaurant. It had been one of those days, the supplier messed up our order, the cook was late, and then a waitress quit mid-shift. I was in no mood for niceties. I walked in, expecting the usual, dinner ready, table set. But Jack wasn't in his office. The house was quiet, too quiet. I wandered into the kitchen, found a note on the fridge. Ordered pizza. Too beat to cook. Upstairs. That was it. No love, no see you in a bit, nothing. It stung more than I expected. I tossed my bag on the counter, frustration bubbling up. The pizza arrived, and I ate it cold, sitting right there in the kitchen, all by myself. A couple of days later, I tried to talk to him about it. He was in his office again, door slightly ajar. I knocked, then pushed it open. He was on the computer, didn't even swivel around to look at me. Hey, can we talk? I asked, leaning against the doorframe. Sure, what's up? His eyes were still on the screen. It's about the other night. And well, the past few weeks. You've been distant. Is everything all right? He minimized whatever was on his screen and finally turned to face me. Yeah, everything's fine. Just got a lot on my mind, you know? Like what? I stepped in, curiosity piqued. Just stuff. House stuff. Bills. That kind of thing. It sounded like an excuse. Jack, you know you can talk to me, right? If something's bothering you. He cut me off with a wave of his hand. I said it's nothing. Don't worry about it. But of course, I worried. It wasn't like him to shut me out. That night, dinner was a quiet affair. He'd cooked, but the effort felt minimal. No candles, no music. We ate mostly in silence. Coming home early wasn't something I did often, given the chaos that usually brewed at my restaurant. But that day, something just told me to head back, maybe some sixth sense or just plain luck. As I stepped through the door, the sound of bustling in the kitchen caught me off guard. I saw a middle-aged woman, humming to herself while chopping vegetables. Who are you? I blurted out, not hiding my shock well. The woman turned, a bit startled, then smiled. "Oh, hello. You must be Mrs. Amelia Freeman. I'm Linda. I've been helping out around here for about a year now, cooking, cleaning, all the housework. Jack hired me. He said it was too much for him to manage." Too much for him to manage? That was news to me. Right, I see. Well, keep doing what you're doing, Linda. I need to sort something out. As she nodded and turned back to her cooking, I walked out, my mind racing. Where was Jack spending all this time if not at home managing things like he'd said? I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them sitting around. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number for a detective agency I'd heard about. It was time to find out what my husband was really up to. A couple of days later, the detective came back with news. Not the kind I'd expected, though part of me was relieved. No other woman, but gambling. My Jack was blowing money at casinos, racking up debts like they were going out of style. When he came home that evening, I was waiting for him, the detective's report in hand. His face fell when he saw the look on mine. "Amelia, what's wrong?" he asked, dropping his keys on the table. "Where have you been spending our money, Jack?" My voice was calm, too calm. He paled, eyes darting away. "What do you mean?" "Gambling, Jack. Casinos. Debts. Ring any bells?" I waved the report. He sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. I was going to tell you. I just needed to sort it out first." "By gambling more?" My patience was wearing thin. "It's not like that. It started small. I thought I could win back what I'd lost, but..." He trailed off, looking miserable. I took a deep breath. This was not how I imagined our life together. "You need help, Jack. Professional help. And you're going to get it, or this," I gestured between us, "is over." He looked up, eyes wet. "I'll do anything, Amelia. Please, just help me this one time. I promise, I'll stop. I'll get treatment." "Fine. But I'm only doing this once. You're signing a receipt for every penny I pay to clear these debts. And you're getting treatment." I was firm, resolute. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I paid off the debts, totaling up to $60,000. He signed the receipt and started his treatment. It was tough, seeing him struggle, but a part of me felt like we were finally getting somewhere, that maybe this nightmare was just a bump in our road together. A couple of months had passed since Jack's gambling issue had come to light, and with his recovery seemingly on track, life had started to settle into a sort of routine again. One night, while we were sitting on the couch watching some forgettable TV show, Jack turned to me with a look I couldn't quite read. "Amelia, I've been thinking, maybe it's time we thought about having a kid," he said, his voice careful, eyes searching mine for a reaction. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. We had talked about this before, long before we got married, and he knew my condition. "Jack, you know I can't. My doctors have always been clear about the risks. Pregnancy could kill me. My body, it wouldn't handle it." He nodded, but there was something off in his nod, almost like relief, which didn't sit right with me at all. But I pushed that thought away. "We need an heir, Amelia. Someone to carry on after us," he continued, as if rehearsing a well-thought-out script. "An heir?" I laughed, a bit harsher than I intended. "This isn't the medieval times, Jack. It's just us, and my restaurant isn't a kingdom." But he wouldn't drop it. Over the next few days, he brought it up again and again. Each conversation more insistent than the last. One afternoon, I got a call from his sister, Laura, who was an obstetrician at the clinic where I sometimes got my treatments. "Amelia, Jack tells me you're hesitant about having a child. You should reconsider. With today's medical advancements, it's perfectly safe." "Safe? Laura, you've seen my medical files. You know safe is a relative term for someone like me." I was standing in the middle of my kitchen, phone pressed hard against my ear, trying to keep my voice steady. Everyone thinks they're an exception. Sometimes, you just have to think about more than just yourself. You're just being selfish. She snapped back. Selfish? Really? It's my life we're talking about. My health. I was fuming now, the phone shaking in my hand. She didn't apologize. Instead, she hung up, leaving a bitter silence in her wake. Jack came home that evening to find me still upset. "What's got you all worked up?" he asked as he dropped his keys on the table. "Your sister called. She's got opinions about us having a baby," I said, not meeting his eyes as I stirred the pot on the stove a bit more vigorously than necessary. "We're married, Amelia. It's about what we both want. And I want a child." He was getting heated now, his words sharp. "And I want to live, Jack. That should matter more." I shot back. The argument spun in circles with no end. The next few weeks were filled with tension. Meals were silent affairs, and conversations were clipped. I could feel the wedge between us growing, turning into a chasm filled with unsaid words and frustrations. I remember that day like it was yesterday, clear and sunny with a chill in the air, the kind that tells you something's off but you can't put your finger on it. I got home earlier than usual, only to find the apartment bustling in a way that made my heart sink. There, in the middle of my living room, stood Jack, his sister Laura, her husband Mike, and a stack of boxes. "Amelia, good, you're here," Laura said, her tone firm and cold, as if she was about to deliver a business report. "We're moving in. This is Jack's apartment, and you need to leave." I stared at them, my mind racing to catch up with the scene unfolding before me. "What are you talking about, Laura? This is my home." Jack stepped forward, his face set in a grim line I had never seen before. "Amelia, I can't do this anymore. You've been controlling and demeaning me for years. I've had enough." His words hit like a slap. Controlling? Demeaning? Jack, what in the world? "Yeah, Amelia, it's always been about what you want, what you need. I've been nothing but a servant here," he cut in, his voice rising with every word. "Cooking, cleaning, taking care of you, and in return, I get nothing but insults." Laura chimed in, her voice equally accusatory. "We've seen it, Mike and I. How you treat him." It's time Jack stood up for himself. Jack shoved a stack of papers toward me, his eyes gleaming with a mix of anger and something like triumph. "I've filed for divorce, Amelia. And I'm seeking compensation for years of emotional labor and abuse. You'll hear from my lawyer." Instead of the outrage they expected, I felt a cold calm settle over me. I looked around at the apartment, at Jack and his co-conspirators, and I knew there was nothing left for me here. "All right, Jack. You'll hear from my lawyer, too." Without another word, I went to our bedroom, my bedroom now, and began packing a suitcase. Within an hour, I was in my car, driving away from the apartment, from the life and the people who had turned against me. I drove to the place I had always known would be my sanctuary if the world fell apart, the luxurious house in the elite cottage village with a specialized clinic nearby. This house, bought with the foresight of a future where I might need immediate and intensive care, represented my true safe haven. As I entered the gates of the village, the security guards nodded with recognition, a small comfort on a day filled with upheaval. Inside my house, I walked through the spacious, sunlit rooms, each corner curated over the years to provide comfort and care, a stark contrast to the cold, calculated home I had just left. I lay down on the plush sofa, a piece chosen specifically for days when my body rebelled and demanded rest. Lying there, I couldn't help but feel a twisted gratitude towards Jack for showing his true colors before it was too late. I had prepared for a life of possible solitude from the very beginning, and now, it was this foresight that comforted me. The tranquility of my new sanctuary was briefly interrupted a few days later by a frantic call from Jack. His voice was a mix of panic and rage. "You framed me, Amelia. This is all some sick game to you, isn't it?" he shouted as soon as I answered. I couldn't help but smile at the absurdity. "Jack, if you think there's something to talk about, come over." I'm not playing any games, but we can talk. I sent him my new address, the calm in my voice stark against his tempest. When they arrived, Jack, Laura, and her husband Mike, the guards let them through, and I watched from my front porch as they stepped out of the car. Their expressions were comical, gaping at the expanse of my home as if they'd walked into a fairy tale. Jack regained his composure enough to confront me. "Your lawyer called. He said I have to pay rent for the apartment, $6,000 next month, because you sold it years ago. You planned this all along." I leaned against the door frame, finding his agitation more tiresome than alarming. "Jack, that apartment was a rental property under a company I own. You assumed it was mine to live in, not to own." He sputtered, his face reddening. "But I put time into that place, cared for it. I deserve compensation, and if you don't give me this house, I'll take you to court." Laura, ever the supporter, piped up, her voice shrill. "And why not? Look at it, Jack. She owes us, living in luxury while we got nothing but scraps." I laughed, not out of amusement, but because of the sheer audacity. "I bought this house long before I met you, Jack. It's legally untouchable by you or anyone else." His sister was seething, her husband pulling at her arm, trying to coax her back to the car. "This isn't over, Amelia. We'll get what's ours." I sighed, motioning to the security guards who'd been watching from a distance. "I think it's time for you to leave." As they escorted Jack and his party out, I couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that I had the foresight to protect myself, sorrow for the man I thought I knew and married. The courtroom was stifling, packed with the murmurs of curious onlookers and the sharp scent of tension. I sat straight, my hands folded neatly on my lap, watching as Jack and his lawyer prepared their pitiful charade of victimhood. "Your Honor, my client has been systematically exploited and emotionally abused by the defendant, forced to endure years of servitude, cooking, cleaning, and subjected to relentless emotional degradation," Jack's lawyer proclaimed, his voice booming across the room. When it was our turn, my lawyer stood, her presence commanding the room's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, what we have here is not a case of exploitation, but rather a calculated attempt to extort my client, a successful businesswoman. We have substantial evidence to prove that Mr. Jack has not only lied about his contributions, but has also deceived my client regarding his activities during their marriage." She then called Linda, the actual housekeeper who had been doing all the work Jack claimed as his own. Linda approached the stand, her demeanor calm and honest. "Please tell the court about your employment," my lawyer requested. "I was hired by Mr. Jack Freeman to handle all household duties, cleaning, cooking, everything he's claimed to have done himself. I was paid from a separate account, which Mr. Freeman managed," Linda testified, her voice steady. "And how often did Mrs. Amelia Freeman interact with you in terms of household management?" "Never. She was under the impression that her husband was taking care of the household as he claimed," Linda replied. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs as the reality of Jack's deceit began to unfold. My lawyer then presented the prenuptial agreement, clearly stating the conditions of our marriage and the financial arrangements in the event of a divorce. As you can see, the prenup explicitly states that in the event of a divorce initiated under such false pretenses, Mr. Jack is entitled to nothing, my lawyer concluded, her tone unyielding. Jack's face went pale, perhaps at that moment he regretted he had not read our prenup to the end. His lawyer fumbled with his notes, his case unraveling before his eyes. The judge took a moment to review everything, his expression unreadable. Then, with a tone of finality, he spoke. "I find in favor of Mrs. Amelia Freeman. The claims against her are unfounded, and the prenuptial agreement stands as valid. The divorce is granted with no financial compensation to Mr. Jack Freeman." Jack slumped in his seat, defeated. Outside the courthouse, his sister's fury erupted. "You fool! You couldn't even do this right. We could have had it all if you'd just gotten her to agree to have a child." Days later, Jack appeared at the gates of my village, desperation written all over his face. "Amelia, please. I'll do anything, clean, cook, just let me come back," he pleaded, his voice cracking. I felt nothing but revulsion seeing the man I once loved reduced to this. "Jack, you need to leave. Now. You're not welcome here," I said firmly. The security swiftly escorted him out as I blocked his number and all contact. This chapter of my life was closed, and I was ready to move on. My life was my own again, and I intended to live it to the fullest.